Hey guys, welcome back to Mondays at the Museum. I'm Carrie and I'm here at the Anna Bemis Palmer Museum in York, Nebraska. So we are back from our holiday break, which means we are back on our town histories kick. And this week's episode is going to be on Henderson, Nebraska. So to talk about Henderson's history, we're going to go back to the 1860s, specifically around 1866, when a guy named David Henderson and his family came to the area. 3 guesses as to who the town is named after. So he actually came to the area with 5 other families in a caravan of sorts, and they settled in what is now the southwest corner of York County. David was a cabinet maker from Scotland. He originally settled in Wisconsin, but then he relocated down to Nebraska because it was just so wide open. In 1874, 35 Mennonite families joined him, and let's just say that their trip here was not all rainbow kisses and unicorn stickers. So basically, they had to move because there was a change in government at the time, and they were scared about losing some of their religious freedoms. So they sent scouts to the USA to kind of figure out where they wanted to settle. Some of those scouts came to Nebraska and surrounding states, and Nebraska must have been the coolest because that's what they chose to do. So they moved here shortly after. But again, you're traveling overseas to the middle of the USA without all the modern amenities that you have now. So not a lot of fun, right? First off, they take a train from Russia to Hamburg, Germany, and then they get on a ship, and it's called the Teutonia, and they take it to New York. But a lot of things went down on that ship, including this big fire. There were seasicknesses, people died. It was not pleasant. And so they finally make it to New York. They get on another train, and this takes them to Lincoln, and then they get stuck there for a month. And this is because the land that they were moving to, they purchased from the railroad, and the railroad was building them this house, which they called the immigrant house, for them all to live in, and it wasn't ready yet. So they're stuck in Lincoln for a month until this building is finally completed. Then they can finally make the completion of the journey, and they do arrive in Henderson, and they move here. Now, this immigrant house that was built by the railroad is supposed to fit all 35 families in it. Now, you got to think, how big is your family? How much space they require. Now, times that by 35 and throw them all together in this 80 by 20 foot building. It's got 2 rooms and a ton of windows, and that's it. So that's what they're going with. But they didn't have to lose their religious freedom, so it's great. They lived there temporarily until their own houses could be constructed, and then they were officially settled. By the way, shameless plug, so that area actually has a museum. It's called the Henderson Mennonite Heritage Park, and they have a replica of that building and a ton of historical items related to that period. To go check it out. It's awesome. In 1878, the first Mennonite church was built. It was the Mennonite Brethren Church. And now, with all these residents around here and settled, it was time to lay out the town, which they did, and it was platted in 1887. Post office was added in 1888, followed by a lumber yard and a depot, and then Henderson was officially incorporated October 14th, 1899. So, some fun facts about Henderson. The Hendersons lived in a log house because David was a cabinet maker. He was pretty good with wood things. And the first sermon was preached in Henderson in their house, and that was done so in 1868. The village was built on land that was owned by a guy named Rogier, Cornelius Rogier. And so people actually talked about naming the town Rogier, and then the Rogier brothers was like, no, let's name it Henderson instead. Immigration, like the families, their education was a little unique. Some of the adults in the community would become teachers, and then they would host classes in somebody's house for a year, and then they would rotate to another house for the next year, and then somebody else's house for the next year. And because money was really scarce, they weren't really paid in money. Sometimes there was money, but it was usually very minimal. So a lot of teachers got paid in like chickens and eggs and things like that. According to a book I have that was published in 1988, there used to be this huge annual beef barbecue that thousands of people would show up to. Henderson, people, if you're watching, if it's still a thing, please reach out because I would totally come to that. All right, and now I'm going to take you for a tour of our Henderson area in our History of York County exhibit. All right, so here is the area as a whole. I'm going to go clockwise. So this is Porcupine Ranch. It's a painting that was done by Roy Tucker in the 60s. Big painter guy from York here. So Porcupine Ranch was a road ranch. We had 5 of these in York County. This is the first one that was built. They're kind of like hotels. They have lodging, but they also have entertainment, food, and all sorts of stuff. It was also a relay station for the Overland Stage Company. So these road ranches were really helpful to travelers who were trying to settle, but they sort of faded away in the 1860s once the railroad was completed. Here we have a couple of photos. So we've got Farmers Valley Ladies Aid Society, which you can see here, these ladies here. And then here's one from 1927. It says it's a general conference for the Mennonite Brothers. Lots of them settled in that church there. Up here we have a map of Henderson, and this is from 1911, and you can kind of see how it's platted out there. This is my favorite Henderson item. So supposedly this is the first main street in Henderson, and they said that they asked every boy that owned a bicycle to line them up there on the main street, and then they posed for a picture. Here we have a couple of items from that Mennonite Brethren church. So this is 2 different anniversary things. So you've got the plate here for the 100th anniversary, so it says 1878 to 1978. And then the cup is from the 125th, which was in 2003. Here we have an adobe brick from the homestead of Jean A. Regier, which was 5 miles north of Henderson. So adobe brick versus sod brick. Sod supposedly has a layer of grass, so this is an adobe brick. Here's a couple of really great historical books. So Memories of Farmers Valley talks about the Farmers Valley Cemetery. That came out in 2003. A lot of really great information and pictures in there. And then the Henderson Mennonites from Holland to Henderson is a really great story of the move, the big, huge, tremendous move that took place. And it's celebrating 125 years. They're remembering our story. Here we have a couple of plates. So that Mennonite Brethren Church was not the only Mennonite church in the area. There are thousands, or were thousands of Mennonites at one time. So they need more than one church. We've got the Bethesda Mennonite Church. So this was a Sunday school project from 1953 to make these plates there. And then we have this Henderson Mennonite Centennial, 1874 to 1974. Now this is not to be confused with the 1987 Centennial. So basically what it is because they made their move in 1874, remember that arduous journey. So 100 years from that, you had the Henderson Mennonite Centennial, but then the town itself wasn't organized till 1887. So here you have the 1987 Centennial, little flyer here, and it's got some really great pictures too as well of different homesteads and businesses downtown and stuff like that. There's the school and the church. A lot of great stuff there. Here we have a calendar plate. This is from 1911. If you look closely, you can see all the months and dates there in the corners. Well, I guess it's a round plate. It doesn't have corners. Edges. Let's go with that. Here are some coasters from the Henderson State Bank, celebrating their 40th year anniversary from 1943 to 1983. Meant to look like coins there on the top. Then we have some photos. So this is the Hubert and Son store around 1900. They had a harness shop, which you can see if you look up towards the top. And you have the draymen with a load of flour. So look at how much flour they could fit on just one cart. They were taking it to the grocery store. And then here is a photo of businessmen from Henderson. The building behind them says 1909, so I'd say pretty early 1900s. And then finally we have a rather large painting, also by Roy Tucker, the guy that did the Porcupine Ranch portrait. So this is really great. It's on the Immigrant House. It's actually called Immigrant House. And you can see the 80 by 20 foot building there, and then several residents there. So let's take a closer look at them. So you got some people in this carriage over here, a guy on a horse greeting them. There's a guy waving with his hat up high, and he's waving to, you can see this figure has their hand up over there. Then you've got this guy relaxing, whistling, sleeping, who knows. And then some people working there on the side in front of the house. And then I just really like it because, you know, you heard the struggle of them trying to flee Russia to save their freedoms and how horrible the journey was here and how people died. And, you know, the ship with the fire and just crazy stuff with the seasickness and stuff, and then to finally make it here and to live in a place that they earned and deserve, and it's just really great. So that was a quick version of the Henderson history. Tune in next week for Lushton, Nebraska.